Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about the cost of owning, running, repairing my EV, and I'm going to compare it against the equivalent petrol car. So luckily this is a Hyundai Kona EV. We've got a direct comparison versus the petrol version. There were hybrids, there were petrols, and there's the full EV. So let's go through the different costs and see which one comes out on top. Is anyone going to have a guess now in the comments below? We're at 30 seconds. Who is going to have a guess to see which is more expensive and why it's more expensive? So who can guess what's the cheapest, what's the most expensive, and why? It might surprise you. So everyone, I have been through my finance agreement. I know exactly what it cost me to buy the car, and so I've got these written down on a piece of paper here in front of you. I think it's going to be flipped when I show you, but I'll just use it to show you and for me to read, so that we've got our calculations right. So first off, the EV version was much more expensive than the petrol version to buy with cash outright. So the RRP was much more. So do you think that will translate into a final total cost of ownership of being more expensive? Because that is questionable, and you might be surprised by the results. I think you really will be shocked, which is fascinating actually. So let's see what we get. So first off, what did I pay? Well, I agreed to pay 37,000 and something pounds for the car. That was including a £3,000 government grant. So it would have been 40, but it was taken down to 37. Might not have bought it if it was without that, and certainly the Tesla Model 3 standard range at the time was a very similar price. I think with the grant got down to 40,600, so this was £3 less, and I thought, well, you've got a bigger battery, you got more range, and that's why I went for this. But here we go. So in 2021 I agreed to give them a £10,300 deposit. I think that does need to be flipped, sorry, maybe I'll in editing flip it around so you can actually read it. Plus I had 12 payments of £252, so a total of £3,024. So that's £13,324. Whereas I just looked up what the cost is to buy a new petrol, and it's a 1 litre petrol, and this is the lowest spec. You can get the hybrids, which are higher specs, both hybrid and plug-in, with 1.6 litre petrol engines and things like that. So I've actually gone for the lowest spec petrol engine here, so it's quite interesting. But I looked up on Auto Trader, a cheap one. They were going to give me £2-3 grand off a new one, but it'd still be £26,000, so still quite a lot, but 11 grand cheaper, and that's about the same for what it was back in 2020 when I bought my car. Well, it was December 2020, I got it the 30th, so it's basically 2021. So they'd have wanted a £2,500 deposit, and then 12 payments of £334. I've written 3, but it was 99 pence, so I've changed it in my calculations. They hit to be 24, so that's an extra 4 grand a year, so that's £6,508. So we're behind, aren't we? So we had 13,000 and we only got £6,580. So we're about 7 grand worse off EV first. And then how much is that 252 going to cost me a month per year? Well, it's 3 grand versus 4, 3 grand versus 4, 3 grand versus 4, and I did a 4-year PCP to catch up with the year that I've bought out the balloon payment to sort of compare. And then I've put in my loan costs because I bought out the PCP at the end because I was happy with the car, etc. My loan costs are £400 a month, so that's £4,800 a year in loan costs. Now I am going to total all those up at the end of the video, so just keep those in mind and we'll move on to the next section, which might be a bit of an interesting comparison. So I live on a terrace street, as you can see, but I've got no terrace on the other side, so let me just show you my setup. So this is where I would charge my car. I'm currently plugged in now, the wire's going under that gate and to a charger on the back of my post. But as you can see down the street, we've got houses on the right, but we have no access to these houses on the left, so only we park here on the right, and so there's no fighting for chargers or all that kind of jazz. So there's no difficulty in parking here. Get it every single day. I could probably count the number of times I've gone, oh, someone's parked opposite my house, I can't charge. Over the 4 years, probably happened less than 5 times. and it's never been a problem. I've just charged the next day, or kind of snuck in and just left just enough room to people get past. I had one text in the WhatsApp group saying, "Oh, you're blocking the road," but no one was really annoyed or anything. No fights. So the next thing to talk about is fueling. So the interesting thing about EVs in 2021, before electricity got expensive, was that you could get free destination chargers. So there was a local hospital. It's I live in Whitley Bay. The local one is called Rake Lane, and the NHS had quite often fitted chargers as part of its sustainability agenda and all that sort of thing. And so they were free in my local hospital, and the idea was for staff to use them. So they were offering it for complete free. So I've put for the first year for my EV costs absolutely zero. So in 2021 I spent no money on fueling the EV. Now there would have been a handful of times I've been at a rapid charger, but even then it was only 30p a kilowatt hour, so it was really cheap anyway. Whoops. I don't actually have a as you can tell, I don't actually have a camera holder. My phone's just precariously placed on there, so never mind. But yeah, 2021 was completely free, and at 30p a kilowatt hour, that would be about half the price of petrol anyway. So I worked out for how much I was using that car that year, did about 7,000 miles. Then in petrol, at 50 miles a gallon, at 130, £1.30 a litre, that it would have cost me about 700 quid. And as we moved down, I got my home charger fitted in March of 2022, and so I've got exact data for how much that cost me. I paid £133 for 1,581 kilowatt hours, so I've got that recorded. And at some point, because electricity was getting more expensive, that was 12p on an off-peak tariff. And I assumed the same mileage for those 2 years, so the same 700. Whereas in 2023, I started doing more miles instead of commuting to Newcastle or mainly getting the metro to Newcastle hospitals. I was then driving to Sunderland. So in Sunderland, I was doing, it's about 15 miles each way, so 30 miles a day. And so I started doing a lot more electricity use. So instead of 1,500, we were going to almost 3,000, so 2,907 kilowatt hours. But electricity came at some point during the year cheaper, at 9p. And my charger app has recorded that I spent £248 on electricity. So rather than that being 2,907 kilowatt hours timed by the 9p, there are some losses in there. So it's just what the app has recorded has been sent to the car. So some of that would have been wasted as heat, as resistance in the battery or whatever, or lost in the inverter, changing from AC to DC. But anyway, so it's a slightly higher pounds figure than exactly timesing that by that would be. Right, and then if we go on, 1,300. So now I'm starting to do more miles. You're really starting to see the difference between what you would cost. So even when it's free, I was only saving 700 quid. But now I'm doing much more miles. You can see that I'm calculating that I'm saving much more money. So instead of just saving 700 quid or 600 quid, I'm now saving over £1,000, £1,100. And then last year, I've started commuting to Newark in Teesside. It's a 40-mile trip each way, 80 miles a day. It does take an hour. It is not ideal, but we love living here. I love working there. So sod it. Just got to do a 2-hour commute, 1 hour each way. So I've used 5,083 kilowatt hours, but now electricity is cheaper. I'm getting a 7p off-peak tariff, and so I'm paying £381. That's nothing. But if I was continuing to use a 50 mile per gallon car, it would be costing me £2,778. So that's about £2,000 cheaper if you forgive the £3 difference there. So just £3 short of a £2,000 a year saving, which is absolutely crazy. It's showing the convenience factor. Never used a rapid charger. I've never had to use a public charger. So that's hella convenient, but it is also a lot cheaper, and that £2,000 in my pocket could pay for a holiday almost. Next is servicing costs. So VW have put out a press release saying that servicing costs, maintenance costs and reliability are about half of what petrol cars are. And you get the usual people if these things are posted on social media saying a load of twaddle about how that's not true, etc. Well, what about my car? What about for a Hyundai, not a VW? What do Hyundais cost to service? So I know exactly how much the servicing is cost because I got a service plan. And for the first 3 years, they were saying, pay us £10 a month, and that'll take care of all your servicing. So that's 360 quid for 3 years. So I've written that down slightly wrong. So what I wrote down was it was costing 100, but actually 120 because you got 12 months. And then I looked just now at what a quote from my local garage, my dealership, which is a Bristol Street Motors, and I looked up a Petrol car's license plate number, and this is what their servicing costs was: 248 for a short year service, but having to be 496 for a double year service. And that increased, and so that's over the years. So on your 4th year, you get 496 as well, and 248 for a normal one. So that is crazy different. So if you just simplify it, it is about half price, isn't it, essentially, which is fantastic. So that's not particularly surprising because there's less moving parts in the EV and all that sort of thing. So that's just good news, what we'd expect. It's what VW said. It's what turns out to be true for Hyundai as well. Fabulous. What about tyres? Because EVs churn through tyres, right? You've got this instant torque, you'll be churning through your tyres, surely. That's what everyone on Facebook says, that EVs are super high maintenance on their tyres, and the tyres cost more because the EVs are so heavy and we're going to cause loads of potholes and blah, 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 blah. How true is that? Well, this is the interesting surprise to me. I found this absolutely shocking. So what I did was I went on Auto Trader, just like for the servicing costs. I found a 2020 premium TDI petrol car with just found the first one for sale that had a number plate that I could use, and I looked at what the tyres would cost for it, and I was absolutely shocked. Here we go. So tyres. So I can buy a premium brand tyres. So I think the cheapest was Continental. The more expensive one was Michelin. And I looked at that for the EV in black and for petrol in pink. They were more expensive. They're about 20 to 40 quid more expensive. So Continental, the ones that I actually buy, £146 each. There was a 10% discount code if I was buying 4 for the EV. So that's taking it to 586 instead of being a bit more. And then for the Michelins especially, for the petrol one, I could get 15% off. So actually it was a little bit more of a saving, but essentially cheaper for the EV. Now, I changed all my tyres at 27,000 miles. I didn't need to. I just felt I should, because you get told these lies at the garages and things, don't you? So I'd must have hit a curb and not damaged the what do you call them, alloys, although I have, but I damaged the tyre sidewall, and I thought, well, I don't want it blowing out or anything while driving on a motorway. I don't want any safety accidents, so I'll just replace the tyre, and I assumed that they were all wearing out. It was 27,000 miles, so I just got 4 new tyres. Turns out I needn't have done that, because the rest of them were sort of at 4 or 5 mil and had thousands of miles left in them. Whoops, won't make that mistake again. But that was at 27,000 miles. I'm now at 55,000 miles. So I've done another 27,000 miles. The tyres are all still 5 mils. Got plenty of tyres left, which is fabulous. So I can't complain there at all. And they're cheaper. You won't have guessed that the EV tyres are actually cheaper than the TDI petrol, the 1 litre petrol. Crazy. But here's where the petrol car can claw a bit of time back. So insurance. So I've seen various reports from different insurers that EVs or petrol cars are cheaper to insure. And there has been issues with Tesla. Tesla are notorious for not having enough parts, and so the repairs take a while because they're sat waiting for parts, and therefore you get higher courtesy car costs, and the garage charge storage fees more, so insurers really don't like it because they get bigger bills bunged up. But I have seen different reports, some saying that petrol cars are slightly cheaper to insure, some saying that EVs are slightly insure, different brands like Compare the Market or something, or the Meerkat one. moneysaving.com, whatever. Price comparison sites have done quotes, and they all come out about £100 within each other. One saying that EV is more expensive, one saying that petrol is more expensive. Essentially, they're about the same. What about my insurance details? Well, when I got rid of my Swift halfway through the insurance year and had to change it, they made me pay 300 quid extra to change it. So I thought, oh, I might be paying £300 extra for insurance every year. That's not great. But in 2022, I only paid £400 a year, which was the same as what I was paying for the Swift. Fantastic. And then idiot here had a car accident and it went to 900. It would have been 1,100 if it wasn't for getting a black box fitted. So, whoops. Very expensive mistake, but it is coming down now, and I paid £700 last year and getting a quote for next year that I just checked, 712. Now, what I haven't done is throughout all those years, because you can't go back in time, had a quote for how much it would have been for petrol. But this year, the 1 litre petrol would be 509. So I assume that it would be around £200 cheaper for each of these years, and that's what I've put in the calculations to try and be as fair as possible. So that's that. So perhaps insurance for this particular EV versus petrol is a bit cheaper. Who knows what it would have been in truth over the years. I've not been sad enough to build a comparison table through every year. Oh, I'll get a quote for my EV. Oh, what's the renewal? Okay, let's check the petrol. Haven't quite been that intense. So now we reached the end, we reached the finale, we reached the total spend. And what is the car worth? Well, here's where the interesting thing comes out. So I worked out everything I've paid, all the deposit, all the PCP prices, all the insurance, all the tyres, and I've added them all together to see how much it has cost me, all the fueling. And even though the petrol car was £11,000 more, this is what it comes out as. Now, there is a slight discrepancy in what I've done, because I have bought out the PCP in the car, but I haven't included that whole loan, because we're not at the end of that loan. That'll be another 4 years. So what I've done is I've pretended that I've extended that PCP for a year, and I did the petrol one over 4 years. So now I'm at 4 years old, or the car is, how much would it cost me? And I've slightly done a fudge factor. So instead of including that whole balloon payment that I'm going to pay off over the next extra 3 years, I'm only going to include 1 year of that loan. It's a bit like I've just refinanced it and delayed the balloon payment for a year. So there's a slight unfairness. Don't know if you'd call that unfairness or not, but I've tried to equalise them. Because in truth, I did a 3-year PCP and then a balloon payment, whereas for this petrol car, I've done a 4-year PCP. And I've tried to make up for that extra year difference as a fairness. So, what is the total spend? Well, for the EV, I spent £24,797. But for the petrol car, I would have spent £27,784. And that is despite the first year of the car, with the difference in the deposits and the difference in the monthly payments being about £7,000. That the higher servicing, that the higher tyre costs, the higher fueling in particular, has meant that you've actually spent £3,000 more. So hopefully I've been accurate with all my calculations, and I'll fess up if I have, or double check everything. But already I've spent £3,000 less. And why is that? Well, the EV was offered at 0% finance, whereas the car is even though they were giving a discount off new, the car finance for the petrol car was at 7%. So you couldn't get the same finance deals. So you could say that's just a further subsidy for the EV, if you like. But how much is the asset worth? Do I own more asset? So the car was about 11 or 12,000 pounds more new for the EV than the petrol car. How much of that premium has the car held? That'll change. It's on a market basis, supply and demand. So when you look, it might be different to when I've looked. But I've kind of looked at 2020 petrol Konas versus EV Konas. I've excluded the 39 kilowatt hour, the small battery. I've only focused on the 64 kilowatt hour, because I can't remember how much the small battery ones will cost you. I could look it up, but I haven't. And so it looks like I've kept £4,000 worth of value extra. So I've tried to leave that. So I've done 55,000 miles. So I put a limit on Auto Trader. Say only show me 2020 models. Only show me cars that have done between 60 and 50,000 miles. And so there was different ones coming out at different prices, but the EV that I found the cheapest was 14,290, whereas the petrol cars were somewhere 9,900, somewhere 10,000 something, but a fair average would be £10,000. So you're keeping £4,000 of that premium, which is not bad. That's good for me. But sometimes when I've looked in the past and put slightly different criteria in, they've both been about the same, about £13,000, £13,000. So whether it's truly worth £4,000 more depends on the test of actually selling them. So that's really interesting. So let me know what you think. Were you surprised? Were you surprised by the tyres being cheaper? Were you surprised by the total cost of ownership being cheaper? And how accurate is that comparison? What about my fudge factor for that final year? Is that fair? Or should I put that whole £17,000 balloon payment in? I don't think that's fair. But I can't go back to the finance company and ask them, oh, you know that finance thing that I bought out? How much would you have quoted me for just a year's extension? I can't do that. Can't go back in time. So this is what I've tried to do, to be fair. And because my loan from Sainsbury's is over 4 years, that's a relatively high £400 payment a month. Whereas if I've done it over 3, it'd been 500, so could bump that up by £1,000. Or if I'd done it over 5 years, it would have been £300 a month, and it would have been a bit lower. So I kind of chose it because it was a middle factor. So let me know what you think about that. Like, comment, subscribe. Do look in the description below. There's a link to getting Octopus Energy referral code, so you can get £50 off your energy if you switch to Octopus, and I get £50 too. There's also Octopus Electroverse code, so you can get £5 off public charging, and I get £5 credit too. Wonderful team. Also, I put my back market, which is a second-hand electrical goods referral code in. You get a tenner off, I get £20 credit, I think. I could only have 3 a month, so if it says it's all used up, Google another one, I'm sure you'll find some. So it's a great way of reusing stuff that gets repaired. Break your phone, break the screen, send it back to your insurer, they'll send you a brand new one, and then that phone will be repaired and go to a second-hand electric goods shop, and it might even go on this website, and then someone like me can buy a cheap Google Pixel 7 like what I'm recording on, for a lot less money and save money. So it's great for you save money on electrical goods, and I get some free credit, so thank you for that if you want to use it. Let me know if you've got any questions. Is there anything else that I've not included? I can't honestly remember if I've had to replace wiper blades. I'm assuming they're the same. I have bought headlights for the car. I have spent and I bought the wrong ones, so I have spent maybe 100 quid to 200 quid on extra bulbs to replace the headlights. I thought they were too dim. I haven't included that because I might have done that anyway if the other bulbs weren't good enough. I can't think of anything else. I mean, there's public charging, but honestly I've used that so little. I've used that maybe a dozen times. It won't add up to the £3,000 difference, not by half. Very rarely with my car having a 300-mile range in summer do I ever have to use public charging, because how often do I drive 150 miles? Not often. I can even drive 2 hours to the lakes and back. It's only 100 miles away. I can get back even in winter on a single charge. So we don't really have any of that problem. Public charging is not an issue. You can charge at home. Okay, all right. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.